While we've all been busy with football's biggest farmer league, the Premier League, one of the best title races in Europe's top leagues has been happening just underneath our nose. If we take a look at Serie A, mamma mia, that title race is absolutely insane. So a good title race is usually defined by how many teams have an actual chance of coming out on top. And in Serie A at the moment, there are 4 great contenders in the league: Napoli, Atalanta, Inter Milan, and Fiorentina, which is absolutely fresh breath of air for Serie A fans and football heads in general, because this league can finally get some of the love and the attention that it really deserves. Let's not forget that throughout the 90s and 2000s, the Serie A was seen as probably the best league in the world and produced so many legendary teams that we still hold in high regard. Multiple Milan sides, Inter Milan sides, Juventus sides, Roma with Totti and De Rossi, Fiorentina with Batistuta, and the list can go on really. And after scandals and other factors depleted the league of its talents and the money pouring into the league, throughout the 2010s, the Serie A really suffered a lot, and there wasn't really many notable contenders coming out of the league outside of Juventus, which is also reflected by the fact that they won so many Scudettos in that time period. Well, after a good bounce back periods in the late 2010s and earlier this decade, we now find ourselves in the position that we're in now, where Serie A once again has multiple good teams competing at a domestic level and also across Europe as they were to compete against the best teams in the world. So overall, you can say Serie A is up and us as football fans are up, as the title race that they have going on over there is good enough to entertain us as all these other leagues become 1 or 2 horse races. Because this year there's 4 teams at this very moment that are within 4 points of each other for top place in Serie A. And mind you, 2 of those teams have a game in hand. So let's say everyone wins their next games available, there will be only 1 point separating everyone at the top. And if you ask me, that is absolute cinema. So real quick boys, if you enjoyed the video, enjoying the content, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. We're dropping weekly football videos, so hit that notification bell so you don't miss an upload. And if you're not new to the channel boys, welcome back. Glad to have you around for another video. So with that being said boys, let's get into this insane title race that Serie A have going on. Of course, as is custom for any football team in the world, the groundwork for these 4 teams all started in the summer before the campaign really kicked off. First off, we have Fiorentina, who over the summer sacked Vincenzo Italiano, what a name by the way, as he had led them to an 8th place finish the year before, and they felt like they really needed a fresh start. So they would appoint Raffaele Palladino in hopes that he could turn a new leaf at the club. Additionally, they had sold some players who had been key for them in the past, but pretty much had reached the point where they had to move on. Players like Nico Gonzalez, Sofian Amrabat, and Milinkovic all left the club this summer. And to help aid these losses, Fiorentina would bring in David De Gea on a free, Moise Kean for 13 million euros, and a few other good squad players like Gosens and Amir Richardson. For Fiorentina, this season for them would be a fresh start. Having sent their manager to the gulag and refreshed their attack a little bit, this season will present them with the opportunity to really kick into good form. Inter Milan this season have the difficult task of retaining their title as champions of Italy. Last season they were absolutely unstoppable in Serie A, as they would end up comfortably winning the league on 94 points, while also touting the best attack and defense in the league, resulting in a record-breaking goal difference. Inter wouldn't make too many signings in the summer, but they would bring in Fratesi from Sassuolo to help boost that already great midfield that they have. They'd also bring in Mehdi Taremi from Porto and Arnautovic from Bologna to provide attacking support as a result of the outgoing Alexis Sanchez. Inzaghi, who has quickly become one of the best managers in Europe, is still at the reins for this side as well. So for Inter, there's definitely hope that going into this season, that a title defense wouldn't be the hardest thing in the world to pull off. Atalanta is a side that for these last couple of years has been knocking on the door of greatness. Having capped off last season with the 4th place finish and winning the Europa League in very convincing fashion against Xabi Alonso's undefeated Bayern, Atalanta would hope that this next season could be one where they could finally build off the great momentum that they've got going. Gasperini's side that's known for its great attacking football and defending brought in some notable signings like Charles de Ketelaere, Ben Godfrey, and Zaniolo from Galatasaray in order to flesh out their squad a little bit more. Having been at the club for almost 10 seasons now and kind of slowly building up that momentum, this could be Gasperini's chance to really make his mark in Serie A. And then we have Napoli. After impressing the footballing world in the 22-23 season, where Kvaratskhelia rose to be a star and they secured their first league title in over 30 years, Napoli had a very disappointing 23-24 campaign as they would finish 10th place in the league and overall just had a season full of struggle. On top of this, they would lose their main talisman Victor Osimhen to Galatasaray, and to address all these issues and make up for the loss of Victor Osimhen, Napoli really had to make some big moves to show that they weren't just going to be some team that won the title and then was going to fall off completely from there. So firstly, they would bring in Antonio Conte, who, love him or hate him, is known for being able to get good results and bring league titles in, unless of course you're Tottenham Hotspur. At that point, nothing can save you. Additionally, Napoli would be very busy in the summer transfer window, as they would bring in Buongiorno, Spinazzola, Billy Gilmore, David Neres, Scott McTominay, and Romelu Lukaku to heavily fortify the squad from top to bottom. Napoli was going to do all they could to ensure that they prove themselves as top dogs in Serie A once again. So with the teams locked in and loaded, that takes us to where we're at today, with all of these guys balling out of control. And I already showed you guys the league table, so I'm not going to pretend like it's some secret where all these guys are currently sitting in the league. Instead, I wanted to look into what have been the keys to success for all of these teams that have taken them to where they're at today. And wow, keys to success sounds very American, but that really is what we have to dive into. So first off, we have Fiorentina, who above many things have a very young squad in comparison to some of these other guys. For example, Inter Milan's average age in the squad is somewhere around 29, which goes to show you the experience that's in the team. So for a squad that's going to be potentially challenging in the league, this could be a downfall for them. And for Palladino, it wouldn't be the prettiest start to the season, as in their first 6 games, they would only win 1 match. The biggest silver lining in this poor run to begin the season was that they did draw at least 4 of those games, and they only lost 1 of them. And it was actually after that first win that Palladino would notice that he had to make some changes to the squad, so he would switch from playing a 3-4-3 to a 4-2-3-1 instead, realizing that this was probably going to be better to get more out of his attackers and his squad as a whole. And boy, did that guy cook with changing the formation of his team, because since then they've been undefeated in the league, and this includes wins over AC Milan, over Roma, and in fact they actually put 5 goals past this Roma side, and this was just a week after putting 6 goals past Lecce. And also in these 7 games they've only conceded 3 goals. That's a rock solid defense if you ask me, and one of the main reasons why they've only conceded these 3 goals is the resurgence of David De Gea. After being unemployed for pretty much a year after getting dropped by United, De Gea finally found a home in Fiorentina, and he's been cooking there ever since. He ranks very highly for keepers across Europe in most metrics, which goes to show just how important having a good shot stopping keeper can be for any team. It's just too bad he still can't claim a cross to save his life. And then on the other side of the pitch, we have Moise Kean, who's having a fantastic season. The guy already has 12 goals so far this season, and at the moment he's just on fire. Of course, Moise Kean, we know he's played at Everton before, at Juventus, and now he's at Fiorentina. We know he's not some world beater, but this year specifically, the form that he's in is world class. I'm not saying he's a world class player, he's nowhere near being the best striker in the world, but he's playing very well. In fact, when compared to strikers across Europe, he ranks pretty highly for expected goals this season, so that has to count for something. He also scored a hat-trick against Verona, which showed a lot of the qualities that's really putting him in the position to score good goals, which is that great center forward play. He's bullying defenders, he's getting in behind very well, and he's able to create his own shots. So Moise Kean's really hooping this year. The only real concerns for Fiorentina is how long will Kean keep up his form. We've seen in the past he's had a couple of purple patches where he gets a good run and gets a couple of goals, but if his goals dry up, it's going to be tough for them to really keep on pushing. And we saw at the beginning of the season that it's possible for this team to struggle. And with key games against Inter Milan, Napoli, and Juventus still to come for Fiorentina, it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with this rest of the season and if they can maintain the form that they're in. Now let's turn our attention to Inter Milan, who of course have a very experienced squad. I mean, this is a team that, like I said, just dominated this league not too long ago. They still have Barella, Bastoni, Lautaro Martinez, and De Marco, which are all key players, especially when you consider the fact that they still have Inzaghi as well, and they're still using his very solid 3 at the back system, in which all of those players that I mentioned are all very important. And their season so far has been a little bit different to Fiorentina, as they've been a little bit more consistent. For the most part, they've been very stable in the results that they're getting. And when you compare them to the other teams that we're talking about here, they've probably spent the most amount of time amongst the top 4 positions, which goes to show they're not dropping off too much from last season. They had a very decisive victory against Atalanta 4-0, which in the long run is going to be huge, especially if the league remains this close. But with that being said, they did drop some vital points as well against Napoli, Juventus, and AC Milan, which of course on the other side of the coin is also going to be a big loss later on in the season. So despite the fact that they have been consistent this year, it's going to feel like a relative disappointment for Inter Milan. Like I said, they dominated the league last year. 94 points, record-breaking goal difference, and now here they are in 3rd place, and even if they win their game in hand, yes, they're going to be within a point of 1st place, but they want to be in 1st place. If you're not 1st, you're last. That's what the great Ricky Bobby said. So that's where they want to be pushing toward. They set their standards, so now they're behind in their own eyes. It makes sense. They're still a great team nonetheless, and they're still the probable favorites, but they really have to play their cards right. And one of the reasons why they are the favorites is because, like I mentioned, they have that great squad. They have players that are in great form, like Marcus Thuram, who's had a phenomenal start to the season with 10 goals and 6 assists. They still have Lautaro Martinez to rely on. He has 6 goals this year despite injury problems. They still have Bastoni, who's still a rock at the back and has been improving from his prior seasons. They still have Barella, who's a great center midfielder that really dictates the play for them. They have a great squad. They're going to be favorites because of their squad alone. But because they are so great, some of the only concerns with them is the fact that they're going to be fighting on 2 fronts. They're doing doing very well in the Champions League this year as well, so you can expect them to make a deep run later on in the season. Which competition are they going to prioritize? If it stays close in the league, it might be tough for them to balance both competitions, especially when you consider that having already dropped some vital points in key games, it feels like they could lose concentration in some of these matches. So they're just going to need to lock in, but just some concerns moving forward. So now if we move to second place in Atalanta, they're just building off of confidence and momentum. If you see the way that Gasperini talks about the side, you can see that there's a belief in the dressing room. A lot of that comes down to the confidence that's building inside the team. It took a couple of games for them to find their footing at the beginning of the season. They got 2 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw in their first 6 games. But since they beat Genoa 5-1, they have not looked back. They've gone 11 games unbeaten in all competitions. They've had exceptional attacking play and a very solid defense. And what a surprise, because it's another 3-back system. These guys out there in Italy are cooking these up like nobody's business. And of course, when it comes to building that confidence and using momentum from previous results and previous years, they have that Europa League win still looming around. The fact that they absolutely dismantled Xabi Alonso's Bayern in the way that they did, it's not going to be something that they forget anytime soon. It's going to help them probably push that extra mile when it comes to these bigger games that they're playing. And in fact, it's probably something that helped them when they beat the current league leaders Napoli 3-0 earlier this season. That type of mentality is going to be key going forward as they play these more important games. And when you have an attack like theirs is firing on all cylinders, it's going to be hard to stop them. Veregu, Charles de Ketelaere, Lookman, they're all balling out of control. In fact, Atalanta has scored the most goals in Serie A. They are that unstoppable force at the moment. The defensive reinforcements that they brought in the summer as well have been very key. Cuadrado and Godfrey are helping this defense a ton. So it goes to show that you need to have a balance in the team. They're scoring a lot, but they've also got that defensive stability. Similar to Inter Milan, their biggest struggle just might be the fact that they're battling Champions League and Serie A. Also similar to Inter, they are doing well in the Champions League. So going forward, making the round of 16, the quarterfinals, gonna be tough to balance multiple competitions. And another thing with Atalanta is that they usually do well at the beginning of the season, at least these last couple of years, and then that second half they see a steep drop off. So hopefully for them they can keep it up, but they just need to ensure that they stay locked in and it's not another case where they start very strong and they use all their energy in the first half of the season and then just drop off.
And while editing this, Atalanta did just beat AC Milan 2-1, so now they're top of the table with the game in hand as well.
And then we have Napoli, who are the current league leaders. And what else can you say about them? But this is what happens when you just have a glow up throughout the club. They pretty much have a fresh coat of paint and it's helping them so much. Their new manager and players all came into the squad and just gelled pretty much instantly. And all the players who were already at the club are also stepping up in great ways. They lost their first match of the season, but since then have been unstoppable. They've been smacking almost everybody. Aside from dropping points to Juventus, Atalanta, and Inter Milan, they've been holding first place since match day 6. They're very well drilled. They've only conceded 9 goals this season, and as all the greats say, defense wins championships, and this is the second best defense in the league at the moment. The only part of the team that they probably do need to improve at this point is the attack. They don't have the most goals or even that close to the most goals in the league, so if they can kind of start scoring a little bit more and keeping that defensive stability, they could be cooking. And when it comes to the players that are doing well for them, where to even begin? Maradona has returned to form and has been absolutely phenomenal. Scott McTominay, despite being a Manchester United reject this season, is a man reborn. He is absolutely going crazy in Serie A. His high pressing, working under Antonio Conte, has been great for him. You have Lukaku, who's turning back the clock a little bit to Chelsea Lukaku, to first season Man United Lukaku, and putting defenders on t-shirts as best as he can. You have Lobotka, who is becoming one of the best center mids in the world, with his ability to dictate these games for Napoli, for controlling matches very easily. Their entire squad is pretty much playing with a lot of poise. And again, they aren't scoring the most amount of goals, but their defensive shifts are proving to be crucial. Their biggest concern for me is just injuries. They don't have the best depth, so if injuries do start to pile up later on this season, it could get a little bit spooky for them. So they're just gonna have to make sure that they stay fit as best as possible. And additionally, I've mentioned it a couple times already, but there is a lack of goals. It could haunt them later on in the season if things do get tough, and if, let's say, defensive focus does drop and they start to concede a little bit more. If the goals aren't coming from somewhere, it's gonna be tough. So I know I said Lukaku's turning back the clock a little bit, but maybe he needs to go a little bit further back, maybe to West Brom Lukaku or something like that, just because those goals gotta come from somewhere. But nonetheless, you have 4 great teams that are all pushing to be the top dog in Serie A. There's only about 4 points between 4th and 1st at the moment, and like I said, if everyone wins their games, there's only 1 point. We're almost halfway through the season. How much more of a gap can really be created at the top of the table? table. This is going to be a league that you really want to keep your eyes on. And what can we say, boys? Serie A is back. It's back. Inter just made the Champions League final not too long ago. You had AC Milan and Inter in the semifinals. Serie A is back.